Tonya Kraft is with us exclusively along with her husband David and her attorney Demosthenes Lorandos. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Tonya, 5:20 yesterday afternoon, the jury foreman says not guilty 22 times, once for each of the 22 counts against you. As you were listening to the foreman, what was going through your mind? What were you feeling?
I was feeling, in one sense, relief, but I wanted to wait until I heard it 22 times before I could even remotely let it sink in. As I said earlier, it wasn't a victory. There's nobody that wins in this situation, and my whole heart had been taken, and I got half of it back. But until I get my children, I won't have my entire heart per se back.
And you lost custody of your children 2 years ago. Were you at any point worried that you would be found guilty?
I was worried the entire time. I'm just kind of one that researches. I went and I researched similar cases. I researched a case in Bakersfield, California, and there was actually a documentary on people that have been falsely accused. I knew the amount of people that are convicted and that are later exonerated on false allegations. I actually went and spoke to some children that are now in their 30s that were part of false allegations, and I almost couldn't let myself think there was going to be a not guilty because I didn't know how. I never thought I could have been arrested for something I didn't do. So it's like I absolutely had to expect the worst and pray and hope for the best and the truth to come out.
You know, this happened in a small town. Everybody knows everybody else. Rumors grow like stuff in a petri dish, essentially. They spread that quickly. Some have characterized what happened to you as a witch hunt. Do you believe that you were the victim of a witch hunt?
I believe I was possibly the victim of a perfect storm, per se.
What do you mean?
As the children were as well. I think that there are many attributes to this, one being there already were some people that, friendships that were no longer friendships, and whenever there was, a certain situation between normal childhood behavior and pointing and touching, and then my name immediately got put into the mix, and then it turned into a parental phone calls back and forth, and even my name being brought up, didn't Miss Tonya do this? And a lot of that was brought out in court, even by the children's own admission in their tape of what their parents told them had happened or not happened.
But why do you think ultimately you were accused of these charges of molesting little girls?
That actually is a very good question, and that's why whenever I began my search for the truth, I began to find the experts that could answer that question, because that's what kept me awake at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, how can this happen? How can you go from doing absolutely nothing to it being twisted into something so heinous? I know with my own daughter, the only thing she had ever said was that I had put medicine on her.
And I think, just to clarify for our audience watching now, I think most people do not realize that of those 3 little girls, one of them was your daughter. Your daughter testified for the prosecution against you, and I think that led a lot of people to believe, well, if her own daughter says she's involved in this kind of behavior, she must be.
Right. And you get a lot of that, and I understand that thought process, especially before. And even though I probably will never teach in a classroom again, I really hope to educate on how you can truly go from a child, nothing happening, to not only them talking about it, but truly believing that something happened to them that did not happen, through a process of, I hate to use this word, but through a process of inept therapy, through a process of investigations done wrong, through a process of interviewing with leading and suggestive questions, and parents.
But from a mom's point of view, an emotional point of view, to witness your daughter on that stand, now you haven't seen her in 712 days, except for the time you've seen her in the courthouse. What was that like for you?
That was the absolute hardest thing that I've ever experienced, because my job as a mother is to protect her, and there obviously was no anger towards her. It absolutely broke my heart to see that my daughter had been pretty much indoctrinated to believe things that weren't true, and to sit there, I mean, was obviously emotional, and I sobbed and was actually berated by the prosecution for not being able to, as they said, act like a grown-up.
Dr. Lorandos, why do you think your client was acquitted in the end? What was the turning point, if there was one, in this trial?
When Tonya did her research into this, she determined that she had no chance at all unless she gave the jury the tools, the tools from science, the tools from all the research, to make a good decision. And the turning point was that we determined, and these of course are the hardest cases of any case to win. I mean, as a doctor, I know these are the most tragic cases, and as a lawyer, I certainly know these are the hardest cases to win. I'd much rather take a white-collar crime case. Tonya determined that she needed to give the jury the tools, and when we treated the jury like people that could really understand this stuff, they rose to the occasion, listened carefully, and took those tools back to the jury room and made a decision on behalf of those little girls and on behalf of Tonya and her family. And it's a good turning point for that community.
And whose idea was it to put Tonya on the witness stand in the first place? Because that's a very dangerous thing to do.
Tonya and I determined from the time we met each other that no matter what the Constitution says about not having to take the stand, when the charges are this horrible, they must hear from you. And so Tonya sucked it up, got up there, and told the entire truth that she was allowed to tell. Many things she wasn't allowed to tell, but she told everything she could and stood up to a tremendously vicious attack on her. I'm really proud of her.
You know, David, you have stood by Tonya through all of this. She lost her job as a teacher, says she may never teach again, probably won't. Lost her home, lost custody of her children.
I'm really relieved that this part of it is completed by at least a verdict. There's a lot of things to do yet, and I've seen virtually every emotion in Tonya possible, but I'm very proud of her. She never quit fighting. She researched, she studied, she went, talked to people, she did whatever she could to stand by her innocence and prove her innocence, and I'm extremely proud of her and very relieved today.
Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to delve any deeper into this, except to say that you have received death threats since this verdict from people who think that this was not fair.
That's why we rushed her out of the courtroom.
And I know that today you're going to file to regain custody of your son and your daughter, and you have one final message for folks out there. I want to share that.
I want to make people aware that this can happen anywhere, anytime, to anyone, and just to get it right, to get professionals to get it right, to have qualified individuals interviewing the children, and for parents, if there is a situation that you wonder about, then take them to the proper people. The rumor formation, just get it right for the children, because the children that are part of false accusations are just as devastated as children that truly are molested.
Yeah, there are a lot of victims in this. Tonya Kraft, thank you so much. David Kraft as well. And Dr. Lorandos, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much.